The last thing Dr. Sarah Chen expected to see in her antimatter containment chamber was perfection. Yet there it was, a stable sphere of antimatter, hovering in the electromagnetic field like a miniature sun, defying decades of scientific assumptions about containment limitations. She blinked hard, wondering if 83 hours without sleep had finally broken her mind. Dr. Chen. Her assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. The readings. They're impossible. Sarah pressed her hand against the reinforced observation window, her reflection ghosting over the shimming sphere beyond. Not impossible, Marcus. Just unexpected. She watched the telemetry streaming across her augmented reality display, each number confirming what her eyes told her. We've done it. Stable containment at room temperature. The discovery should have filled her with triumph. Instead, an inexplicable dread settled in her stomach as she watched the antimatter pulse with an almost organic rhythm. Something about this breakthrough felt too easy, too convenient. 20 years of research, countless failed attempts, and suddenly, perfect containment. In the depths of the Kuiper Belt Research Station, far from Earth's watchful eyes, Sarah had pushed the boundaries of antimatter research beyond what any other scientist had achieved. The station's isolation had been both a blessing and a curse, allowing for experimental freedom while forcing her team to be entirely self-reliant. Running full-spectrum analysis now, Marcus announced. His excitement was evident even through the static-filled connection. Energy output is stable at... Wait. Dr. Chen, we're picking up some unusual quantum fluctuations in the containment field. Sarah frowned, focusing on the new data streaming across her display. The fluctuations weren't random. They formed patterns, almost like... The entire station shuddered. Warning klaxons blared to life, their urgent wailing drowning out Marcus's startled curse. Sarah's eyes snapped to the external camera feeds, expecting to see a micrometeor impact or system failure. Instead, she found herself staring at impossibility. A ship hung in the void outside the station, its hull composed of overlapping geometric patterns that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. It had appeared from nowhere. No hyperspace signature, no engine flare, nothing. It simply existed where moments before there had been empty space. Marcus, initiate containment protocols and data backup. Now. Sarah's voice remained steady even as her heart hammered against her ribs. She'd spent her entire career preparing for first contact, but she'd always imagined it happening on humanity's terms, not like this. The alien vessel's surface rippled, and a beam of coherent energy lanced out, not toward the station's vital systems or defense arrays, but directly at the antimatter containment chamber. Sarah's augmented reality display exploded with warnings as the beam interfered with the containment field, creating cascade patterns that mirrored the quantum fluctuations they detected moments before. They're not attacking, Sarah whispered, understanding flooding her mind. They're communicating. The antimatter sphere pulsed in response to the alien beam, its rhythm changing to match the incoming signal. Sarah's translation software struggled to make sense of the data, but patterns emerged, mathematical constants, atomic structures, and finally, a simple but chilling message. Cease containment research. Your species is not ready. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. 20 years of work, of sacrifice, of pushing human understanding beyond its limits, and an alien species simply appears to tell humanity to stop. The antimatter sphere pulsed again, but this time Sarah recognized something in its pattern that the aliens had missed. Evidence that humanity's breakthrough hadn't come from luck or cosmic intervention. They'd earned this. Marcus, she called out, her voice tight with controlled anger. Initiate Project Prometheus. Authorization, Chen, Alpha 001. Dr. Chen, are you sure? That protocol isn't tested. Neither was first contact, but here we are. Sarah began typing commands into her console, her fingers flying across the holographic interface. They want to tell us we're not ready. Let's show them exactly what humanity can do when backed into a corner. The antimatter sphere flared brilliantly as Sarah's commands took effect. The alien's communication beam stuttered, then cut off entirely. On her display, Sarah watched as the geometric ship recoiled, its liquid metal surface rippling with what she hoped was surprise. Project Prometheus had been her failsafe, a theoretical application of antimatter containment that even her own team thought impossible. But as emergency power rerouted to the containment chamber and the antimatter sphere began to pulse with a new pattern, Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. The game was about to change, and humanity would not be playing by anyone else's rules. Project Prometheus transformed the antimatter containment chamber into something the aliens clearly hadn't expected. The sphere pulsed with increasing intensity, each wave of energy matching the exact frequency of the alien vessel's quantum signature. Sarah watched as mathematical equations scrolled across her display, confirmation that her gamble was working. Dr. Chen, Marcus's voice shook slightly. The alien vessel is attempting to establish a more conventional communication channel. They're broadcasting in English. Of course they are, Sarah muttered. They probably pulled every human language from our satellites before making contact. Put them through, but maintain Prometheus at current levels. The observation room's speakers crackled to life with a voice that sounded like liquid mercury given sound. Human researcher, you demonstrate unexpected capability. Your manipulation of antimatter containment patterns suggests external assistance. Identify your technological benefactor. Sarah almost laughed. No benefactor. Just human ingenuity and 20 years of dedicated research. Your attempt to interfere with our containment field gave us valuable data about your own technology. We're quick studies. The alien vessel's surface rippled with patterns that Sarah's software interpreted as agitation. Impossible. Level 4 antimatter manipulation requires minimum 3 centuries of dedicated research. Your species achieved controlled fusion less than 1 century ago. Then perhaps your development timeline needs revision. Sarah's fingers danced across her console, adjusting Prometheus's output. Right now, our antimatter containment field is synchronized with your vessel's quantum signature. One wrong move from you, and we'll find out if your ship's exotic matter hull can handle a controlled antimatter cascade. The silence that followed stretched for nearly 30 seconds. Sarah used the time to study the readings from the alien vessel, noting how its geometric patterns shifted and flowed. There was something almost organic about its behavior, as if the ship itself was a living entity. Your threat is acknowledged. The alien voice finally responded. We are the Vex. We serve as custodians of technological development in this sector of space. Your species has progressed too rapidly. This creates instability. Sarah's jaw clenched. Instability for whom? Your control over other species. For the galaxy itself. The Vex ship's patterns shifted again, projecting a holographic display into the observation room. It showed a map of the Milky Way, with countless points of light representing civilizations. As Sarah watched, several points flickered and died. Uncontrolled technological advancement leads to extinction events. We prevent this by keeping other species under your thumb. Sarah challenged. Humanity won't accept artificial limitations on our development. We've come too far, learned too much. Your defiance is anticipated. It changes nothing. The Vex ship's energy signatures began to spike. If you will not cease research voluntarily, we will be forced to take direct action. Your containment threat is impressive, but limited. We detect no other antimatter facilities of this sophistication in your solar system. Sarah smiled. Are you sure about that? She entered a final command sequence, and Project Prometheus entered its second phase. Across the solar system, in seemingly abandoned asteroid mines and hidden lunar facilities, dormant antimatter containment chambers hummed to life. Each one synchronized with her signal, creating a web of quantum-entangled antimatter nodes that even she hadn't been entirely sure would work. The Vex ship's patterns froze, then began shifting rapidly. Impossible. Our scans detected no. Your scans detected exactly what we wanted them to detect. Sarah interrupted. Humanity learned to hide our achievements long ago, when we were still hiding from each other. Did you really think we broadcast our true capabilities to the stars? Emergency alerts flashed across Sarah's display as the Vex ship's energy output suddenly doubled. You leave us no choice. The removal of your research facility has been authorized. Know that this action brings us no pleasure. Neither does this, Sarah whispered, and activated Prometheus's final protocol. The antimatter sphere in her containment chamber flared like a newborn star, its energy perfectly in sync with every other hidden facility across the solar system. The Vex ship's liquid metal surface began to twist and distort as quantum forces beyond even their understanding tore at its structure. "Marcus," Sarah called out, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding before her. "Initiate emergency broadcast to Earth. Tell them first contact has a price, but humanity's future isn't for sale." The Vex ship's communication cut off in a burst of static as its hull began to break apart. Sarah watched, her expression grim, as humanity's first contact with an alien species dissolved into a cascade of quantum particles. She knew this wasn't the end. It was barely the beginning. The Vex would return, probably with a fleet next time. But they would return to find a humanity that had finally shed its last illusions about the galaxy. The stars weren't waiting to welcome them with open arms. They would have to fight for their place among them, armed with the very technology their would-be oppressors sought to deny them. As the last traces of the Vex ship vanished from her sensors, Sarah began composing her report to Earth's unified government. The title came easily: Project Prometheus, humanity's warning shot. The galaxy would soon learn that humanity's rapid progress wasn't a mistake to be corrected. It was a promise of things to come. 3 weeks after the destruction of the Vex ship, Earth's unified government gathered in an emergency session beneath the reinforced bunkers of Geneva. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before the assembled leaders, her holographic presentation showing the quantum aftermath of humanity's first interstellar conflict. The Vex ship's destruction proved 2 things, Sarah explained, her voice echoing through the chamber. First, that our antimatter containment technology surpasses even their understanding. Second, that we are now at war, whether we want to be or not. The Secretary General leaned forward, her aged face lined with concern. "You're certain they'll return?" Perhaps the destruction of their vessel sent a clear enough message. Before Sarah could respond, the chamber's quantum detection system screamed to life. The massive underground screen that normally showed Earth's weather patterns suddenly displayed a fleet of geometric ships emerging from what appeared to be tiers in space itself. "I think we're about to find out," Sarah muttered, quickly accessing her portable console. The quantum signatures matched the original Vex vessel, but these ships were larger, their patterns more complex and aggressive. The chamber's communication system activated without any human input. The same liquid mercury voice from before filled the room, but now it carried an edge of cold fury. "Humanity, you have demonstrated both unexpected capability and unacceptable aggression. We offer you one opportunity for preservation." The Secretary General stood, her voice firm despite the tension visible in her shoulders. "We are listening, but understand that humanity will not be subjugated. Subjugation is not our purpose." The Vex voice seemed to ripple through the air itself. "We offer integration. Surrender your antimatter research facilities and accept technological oversight. In exchange, you will be granted controlled access to galactic civilization. Refuse, and your species will be quarantined. No trade, no contact, no advancement beyond your solar system." Sarah's fingers flew across her console, analyzing the Vex fleet's position and energy signatures. Something wasn't right. The ships were arranged in a complex geometric pattern, but they weren't in an attack formation. "They're scared," Sarah announced, loud enough to cut through the murmurs of the assembled leaders. "Look at their formation. It's defensive. They're not here to attack. They're here to contain us, because they don't know what else we might have hidden." The Vex voice carried a note of what might have been irritation. "Your assessment is irrelevant. You will provide your decision within one planetary rotation. Choose wisely. The communication cut off, leaving the chamber in tense silence. Sarah continued analyzing the data, her mind racing through possibilities. The Vex fleet's defensive posture confirmed her suspicions. They hadn't expected to find a primitive species with technology that could threaten them. Dr. Chen, the Secretary General's voice cut through her thoughts. You've led us to this point. What do you recommend? Sarah looked up from her console, her expression determined. They're offering us a cage with golden bars. Integration on their terms means giving up our independence, our drive to advance. We'd become like every other species they've guided technological puppets dependent on their approval. And the alternative? A military advisor asked. They could vaporize our planet with that fleet. No, Sarah shook her head. If they could safely destroy us, they would have already done it. They're afraid of what our antimatter technology might do if they attack. More importantly, she brought up a new display, showing the quantum entanglement readings from Project Prometheus. They still haven't detected our full capabilities. The Secretary General studied the display. Explain. The facility they encountered was advanced, but it wasn't our only card to play. While they've been watching our official research stations, we've been developing something else, something that could change everything. Sarah activated a secure channel to her hidden research teams scattered across Earth and its colonies. Data began streaming across the chamber screens. Project files marked Exodus. We knew first contact might not be peaceful, Sarah continued. Project Prometheus was our warning shot. Project Exodus is our insurance policy. The Vex think they can isolate us in our solar system. Let's show them why that's a mistake. The chamber erupted in discussion as Sarah outlined her plan. It was audacious, potentially catastrophic if it failed, but it represented everything humanity stood for: the refusal to be contained, the drive to push beyond imposed limitations. As the leaders debated, Sarah's console beeped with an update from her quantum sensors. The Vex fleet was adjusting its position, probably preparing for what they assumed would be humanity's inevitable surrender. They had no idea what was coming. Sarah smiled grimly as she began the initialization sequence for Project Exodus. The Vex thought they were offering humanity a choice between submission and isolation. Instead, they were about to learn why some species should never be backed into a corner. The clock was ticking toward humanity's deadline, but for once, time was on their side. The deadline approached with the inexorable precision of atomic time. In low Earth orbit, the Vex fleet maintained their geometric formation, their ships' liquid metal hulls reflecting the sun like a constellation of artificial stars. But beneath the surface of humanity's homeworld, a plan 20 years in the making was reaching its culmination. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the heart of Project Exodus's control center, buried deep beneath the Antarctic ice. Around her, quantum computers processed data from thousands of hidden antimatter facilities scattered across the globe. Each one had been disguised as something mundane: water treatment plants, geothermal stations, even shopping centers. Final synchronization complete, Marcus reported from his station. All nodes are aligned and ready. But Dr. Chen, are we certain about the calculations? The energy requirements alone are beyond anything humanity has ever attempted. Sarah finished, her eyes fixed on the main display. That's rather the point. Status of the evacuation protocols. A military officer stepped forward. All critical personnel and resources are in position. The underground arcologies are sealed and shielded. If this works, we'll be as ready as we can be. Sarah nodded, then opened a channel to the Geneva bunker. The Secretary General's hologram appeared, her expression grave. The Vex are broadcasting again. They're demanding our answer. Then let's give them one they'll never forget. Sarah's fingers danced across her console, initiating Project Exodus's final sequence. Broadcast on all frequencies. Let them hear everything. The Secretary General stood before the assembled leaders of Earth and activated the global communication system. Her voice rang out not just through the bunker, but to every corner of the planet and beyond. To the Vex Collective, she began, her voice steady. Humanity has considered your offer of integration. We understand the responsibility you claim as custodians of galactic development. We acknowledge your concern about uncontrolled technological advancement. On Sarah's displays, the Vex fleet's energy signatures fluctuated. They were listening. However, the Secretary General continued, "We reject the premise that advancement must be controlled. We reject the notion that species must develop according to your predetermined timeline. Most importantly, we reject your ultimatum." The Vex ships began to shift, their formation tightening. The liquid mercury voice filled all channels. "Your rejection is noted. Quarantine protocols will now—" "We're not finished," Sarah cut in, her voice overlaying the global broadcast. "You offered us a choice between submission and isolation. But you forgot something fundamental about human nature. We always find a third option." She pressed her palm against the quantum-secured activation panel. Around the world, hidden antimatter facilities hummed to life. But unlike the defensive network that had destroyed the first Vex ship, these facilities had a different purpose entirely. "Project Exodus isn't a weapon," Sarah announced, watching as the quantum field began to form around the planet. "It's humanity's declaration of independence. The Vex fleet's sensors must have detected the building energy because their ships suddenly broke formation, weapons charging. Your antimatter network cannot penetrate our defensive shields. Cease this futile." "We're not trying to attack you," Sarah interrupted. "We're leaving." The quantum field erupted into visible light, a web of pure energy encompassing the entire planet. The Vex fleet opened fire, but their weapons passed harmlessly through the field, their energy absorbed and redirected into the growing phenomenon. "Impossible." The Vex voice actually cracked with what might have been fear. "You cannot move an entire planet. The energy requirements are being met by every antimatter reactor we've built over the last 20 years, Sarah completed. "You thought we were developing weapons. We were building a way out. Humanity's greatest achievement isn't our ability to fight. It's our ability to adapt, to find solutions no one else would even consider." The quantum field began to pulse with familiar patterns, the same ones that had destroyed the first Vex ship. But this time, amplified by thousands of synchronized facilities, it wasn't targeting a single vessel. It was reshaping space itself around the entire Earth. "Phase displacement in 3, Sarah called out, her voice steady despite the tremors now shaking the control center. 2, 1. The world went white. When vision returned seconds later, Earth hung in space, but not in the familiar orbit it had occupied for billions of years. The sun was smaller, more distant. Unknown stars painted the sky in alien configurations. And there wasn't a single Vex ship in sight. "Position confirmed," Marcus announced, his voice filled with awe. We've transported the entire planet to the coordinates we selected. We're now approximately 2,000 light-years from our original position." Sarah allowed herself a small smile as she began receiving status reports from around the globe. The underground arcologies had protected most of the population from the worst effects of the transition. Damage was minimal. Earth's artificial satellite network had made the jump with them, maintained by the same quantum field that had moved the planet. "Send word to the Secretary General," she ordered. "Project Exodus was successful. Earth is free. And we've just changed the rules of galactic politics forever." As her team celebrated around her, Sarah began composing a new message, not to the Vex, but to any other species that might be watching. It was time to introduce the galaxy to a humanity that had broken free of its chains before they could even be applied. The message was simple. We choose our own path. Who wants to walk it with us? 6 months after Earth's extraordinary relocation, Dr. Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of humanity's first extraterrestrial embassy. The structure floated in neutral space, its antimatter-powered shields glowing softly against the backdrop of unfamiliar stars. Below her, representatives from 12 different alien species gathered in the main chamber, none of them Vex. The latest reports are in, Marcus said, joining her at the window. He'd traded his lab coat for diplomatic attire, though his tablet still displayed quantum mechanics formulae. 3 more civilizations have broken away from Vex oversight. They're requesting technological exchange programs. Sarah nodded, watching a crystalline ship dock with the embassy. And the Vex, still maintaining their quarantine zone around Earth's original coordinates. Marcus smiled. They're guarding empty space while broadcasting warnings about the dangers of uncontrolled human influence, which only makes more species curious about us. Sarah turned as the chamber's doors opened, admitting the newest delegation. The aliens were bioluminescent, their bodies pulsing with patterns that reminded her of the antimatter containment fields that had started everything. The Secretary General's voice came through their secure channel. "Dr. Chen, our guests are ready. Shall we begin?" Sarah straightened her jacket and headed for the chamber. The last 6 months had transformed humanity's position in the galaxy. Their unprecedented planetary relocation had done more than escape the Vex. It had shattered the myth of predetermined technological progression that had kept countless species under control. Representatives of the galactic community, Sarah began, her words automatically translated by quantum field interpreters. 6 months ago, humanity faced a choice between submission and isolation. We chose neither. Instead, we demonstrated that the path to advancement cannot and should not be controlled by any single species or ideology. The chamber hummed with murmured translations and excited bioluminescent pulses. Several delegates manipulated holographic displays, reviewing the technical data Earth had shared about Project Exodus. "We stand before you not as conquerors or revolutionaries," Sarah continued, "but as proof that innovation thrives best when it's free." The Vex claimed to protect the galaxy from uncontrolled advancement. But look around this room. Since Earth's relocation, how many of your species have achieved breakthroughs that were previously thought impossible? A delegate from a silicon-based civilization rose, their crystalline form catching the light. "The human achievement forced us to question centuries of accepted limitations. When we began our own antimatter research, free from Vex oversight, we discovered they had been subtly suppressing our quantum mechanics understanding for generations." "Precisely," Sarah nodded. "The galaxy doesn't need custodians. It needs collaboration. Earth's new position offers us a unique opportunity to build something unprecedented, an alliance based not on controlled development, but on shared discovery." The chamber erupted in approving gestures from multiple species. Sarah activated the central holographic display, showing a new stellar map. Earth's position glowed bright blue, surrounded by the territories of their new allies. "We propose the establishment of the Free Development Accord," Sarah announced, "a mutual defense and research agreement that ensures no species can impose their will on another's technological advancement. Together, we can." Warning signals suddenly flashed across the embassy's sensors. A massive quantum distortion was forming just outside the defensive perimeter. Sarah's hand moved to her console, but before she could act, the distortion stabilized into a familiar geometric pattern. A single Vex ship hung in space, its liquid metal hull reflecting the light of nearby stars. But unlike the aggressive vessels they'd encountered before, this one's patterns flowed in softer, almost uncertain configurations. The liquid mercury voice filled the chamber, but its tone had changed. "Humanity, we request diplomatic contact." Sarah exchanged glances with the Secretary General, then smiled. "Welcome to the Free Development Accord's first official assembly. Would you like to observe?" The Vex ship's patterns shifted in what might have been surprise. "You would permit our presence?" After our previous interactions, "The goal was never to replace one form of control with another," Sarah replied. "If you're ready to engage as equals rather than custodians, there's room at the table for everyone." The chamber filled with quiet discussion as the Vex ship docked with the embassy. Sarah returned to her observation window, watching as the galaxy's former custodians prepared to enter as equals. Earth's antimatter research had started as a scientific pursuit, but it had evolved into something far more important, a catalyst for freedom. Marcus joined her at the window. Did you ever imagine it would end like this? Sarah shook her head, smiling. It's not ending, Marcus. Look around. Every species in that chamber has broken free of artificial limitations. They're all asking the same question we did. What else is possible? She turned to face the gathering of alien delegates, including the newly arrived Vex representatives. This isn't an ending. It's humanity's gift to the galaxy, the beginning of true freedom to advance, discover, and grow. Beyond the embassy windows, the unfamiliar stars seemed to shine brighter, as if acknowledging that the galaxy's future had just become infinitely more interesting. And somewhere in that vast expanse of space, Earth orbited its new sun, a testament to what was possible when humanity refused to accept the limitations others tried to impose. They had not only secured their own freedom, but had sparked a revolution of thought and innovation across the galaxy. The age of controlled development was over. The era of free discovery had begun.